The market of smartphone filmmaking accessories has exploded in the last couple of years, especially since the release of the iPhone 15 Pro, which unlocked external ProRes recording capability. There are a couple names you may be familiar with in this space, but have you heard of Sandmarc? They were founded in 2013 in California, and they make accessories for Apple devices, including filmmaking gear. In this video, we're going to check out some of their newest gear for the iPhone 16 lineup, including the 1.33x anamorphic lens, the Pro case for the iPhone 16 Pro Max, a set of NDPL filters, and their film rig. Before we dive in, I want to mention that Sandmarc sent me these items for the purpose of reviewing them. I was not paid to make this video, and Sandmarc has no input on my review. I do have a couple affiliate links in the description for you wherever I could find these available, in case you'd like to pick up anything that we talk about and you want to support this channel. All right, normally I would give you an overview of features and specs of something before getting into pros and cons, but we have a bunch of things to talk about here, so we're gonna kind of weave in some pros and cons into the conversation about each of the items that Sandmarc sent me to test. Let's start with the Anamorphic 1.33x lens. Some of you may be wondering how this lens compares to the one that Moment offers, and we'll get to that in a moment. This lens here offers a 2.4:1 aspect ratio and 113-degree field of view. The glass is multi-coated and it has gold flares. However, I did observe the flares to take on the color of some light sources that have a stronger color to them. It has built-in threading for mounting 43mm filters, which is the size of Sandmarc's filters, but you can also use a step-up ring to mount your own larger filters if you want to. They use a threaded mounting system and it screws into either their Pro case, which I have on my iPhone 16 Pro Max right here, or you can also screw it into the clip-on mount that comes with the lens. The lens costs $139.99 US, but that does include the Pro case for your phone model of choice, the clip-on mount, a storage pouch, and front and back lens caps. The 1.33 anamorphic lens kit with the case is available for multiple generations of iPhones, including the most recent iPhone 16 lineup, going all the way back to iPhone 7 and 8 Plus models, so chances are they have a kit for your model. Sandmarc also offers a 1.55 anamorphic lens with blue flares, which costs $169.99 for the kit. I only have the 1.33x with gold flares to test out. All right, now let's talk about actually using this lens. One thing that is a little bit finicky with the design is that the top part of the lens housing rotates freely, which is both necessary and annoying. The base frame of the lens needs to be screwed into the threaded mount on the case or clip. However, the front of the lens housing rotates so you can get the positioning of the lens correct and not have a skewed image, which is absolutely important. Speaking of that front of the lens, in my opinion, at least on my unit here, I think it rotates almost a little too easily. So while I had no problem lining it up using little hash marks on the case and the lens, I would occasionally bump it just slightly and it will move. So you have to correct that position again. And that issue will come up again later when we talk about the filters that they sent me. All right, let's talk about the flaring and how the image compares to the Moment T-Series 1.33 anamorphic lens, which I also have. For most of the footage samples you're going to see, I use the Blackmagic camera app for the iPhone, but for a couple of things, I also use the Kino app, so just watch the text on the screen if you want to know which app I was using. I found the way that both the Sandmarc and Moment lenses handled flares to be pretty similar when using a couple different artificial light sources just sitting inside. They both have flares that are strongest in the center of the frame and will fade away towards the top and bottom. They both also produce a bit of a ghost or mirroring effect of the light source from certain angles, which could be distracting depending on what that source is. Now, the low light performance of this lens was actually quite nice, and when I got some footage of some Christmas lights that have a lot of tiny little light sources in the frame, I was pleasantly surprised to not see a big fat mess of flares. When it comes to distortion, both the Sandmarc and the Moment 1.33x lens have it. You can see pretty decent curvature to lines on the far edges of the frame with both lenses, but you can correct that in post if it's distracting from your shot. I use DaVinci Resolve and the lens distortion tool makes it easy to correct, but it is not a silver bullet. You will see the distortion in panning shots or if you have straight lines on the edges of the frame, and the correction doesn't always get you a perfect result. So you just have to plan ahead for what type of shot you are planning and think about whether the anamorphic lens is really the best choice, because generally a static shot is usually going to be fine when you correct that in post, but it's more the moving shots where sometimes the correction still gets you a little bit of an odd looking image. But if you like the distortion, then it's not severe, and I think it definitely adds a little bit of character. This is a quick sample of the Anamorphic 1.33x lens now mounted to the 5x telephoto or 120mm lens on the iPhone 16 Pro Max. A quick sample of what that field of view difference is compared to the 24mm lens with the 1.33x anamorphic. Now, when it comes to the mount itself, as I mentioned, Sandmarc uses a threaded mount, while Moment uses a flange that you twist into place more like a lens on a camera body. They both work fine, but personally, I do find the Moment mount to be a little sturdier feeling, and I also just feel a little uncomfortable about twisting something down towards the glass of my phone lens. That being said, I did not observe any contact or damage from the Sandmarc lens. It's just the thought of doing that it's like I'm about to scrape my lens glass or something. It didn't happen, but it just makes me a tad uncomfortable. The only real performance issue I experienced with the anamorphic lens was on the 5x or 120mm lens of the iPhone, because you can mount it, as I probably mentioned earlier, you can mount it to either of those lenses. There are no threads in the case to mount it to the ultra-wide lens, but you mount it primarily to the 24mm or your 5x 120mm lens. That 5x lens is the one where I experienced a performance issue, and specifically it was the focusing. As you saw in the sample I provided, I was completely out of focus while I was talking there. When I tried to tap to focus on something, it just kind of wouldn't focus on it. That's not an issue at all with the 24mm lens of the phone. It really was just an issue with the 5x lens. However, I should point out that's not unique to my experience with the Sandmarc anamorphic 1.33x lens. The Moment T-Series lens also has a mount on the 5x lens of the Pro iPhone models as well. While I didn't get the exact same result, I do get like some autofocus pulsing kind of issues when I use the anamorphic lens, the Moment lens. There's just something with accessory lenses in that 5x lens that I've have some trouble with, because I've never really had good results with anamorphic or any other lens, combining them with the optical 5x lens of the iPhone. There are two things that I actually like better about Sandmarc's lens. One is the filter functionality. Moment's lens has a square housing, and if you want to put a filter on it, you have to buy their adapter separately to convert the square shape into a filter mount. They sell a 67mm filter adapter for $26 if you bundle it when you buy the lens. That's nice because I already have some 67mm filters, but it's also annoying because you have to buy their adapter. Sandmarc's lens, on the other hand, has a round housing with 43mm threads already on it. So you can either use their filters that they sell, or you can get a 43mm step-up ring and use your own filters. I kind of like that system a little better. The second and bigger thing that I like better is the price. I didn't notice any real image quality advantages with Moment's lens, but the Sandmarc lens gives you everything you need, including the case for your phone, for $139.99. A Moment T-Series lens has an MSRP of $150 for just the lens. The case is $50, and if you want to mount filters, that's another $26. So now you're up to $226 for a similar setup. I don't have any real problems with Moment's lens or the case that it comes with or anything. It's just, it is more expensive for something very similar. To me, the small annoyances with the mounting and straightening of the lens for the Sandmarc lens here, those are worth the trade-off on the price, at least as it currently stands. However, that is going to be up to you as to whether these little frustrations are worth that price trade-off. Now, as I've said, the case comes packaged with the lens, but let me just comment separately on the case for a second, because you can buy them separately and they have a couple different versions. Sandmarc's Pro case here that comes with the anamorphic lens can be bought separately for $39 in black or $49 in a few other colors. The camera lens bump housing area here is made of aluminum, and the rest of the case is an industrial polymer with a rubberized finish on the outside and microfiber on the inside. It is MagSafe compatible, and I had no issues using my MagSafe charger with it. The texture and feel of the case is a little bit softer compared to Moment's case, which has more of a hard plastic feel, so it actually feels a little bit nicer, I think, in your hand than Moment's case. It's not too slippery, but it doesn't have any actual texture, any ridges or anything for grip, so it's not the most grippy either. It does, the black one anyway, does show fingerprints. It's not like terrible, but it does kind of get smudges on it. The only real minor annoyance that I have with the case itself has to do with the alignment of the cutouts for the camera lenses. The cutout for the main 24mm camera lens does not appear to be perfectly centered around the lens. I tried removing it and putting it back into the case a few times to make sure it wasn't me like misaligning it, but every time it ends up looking slightly off center, more so than the other cutouts for the other lenses. It didn't seem to affect the performance of the anamorphic lens in any of my testing. It's just just a small imperfection, and I'm not sure if it's just my copy or not. All right, next up, let's talk about the set of NDPL filters that they sent me. And they also sent me their filter step-up ring, which allows you to use these filters directly on the case itself without any actual lens or with the clip-on adapter for the lens, but they also include with the set of filters a clip-on adapter that you can just put the filters directly on. So there's multiple different ways you can use this. By the way, these clip-on adapters for both the lens and the filters are 100%, well, I guess except for the spring, they're pretty much all plastic. They're not the best feeling construction-wise, but they're also not terrible. I've definitely had worse, and these are included. You don't have to buy these separately, so overall, not bad. Now, Sandmarc does offer a variable ND filter as well, but this set of 3 are fixed ND filters, specifically ND 16, 32, and 64. But these are combo filters that also have a polarizer element. The set goes for $129.99 and includes the clip-on mount, as I mentioned. Sandmarc sent me a set of 3 combo NDPL filters. We're using the ND64 PL filter right now. So, you know, this is a scenario where it doesn't hurt to have the polarization on there to get a deeper blue sky. I certainly need the ND filter. It seems to me in the testing I've done and samples like this, the ND filters from Sandmarc work just fine for preserving that motion blur. And in scenarios like this, I also don't mind having the PL part of the filter baked in. I haven't had any issues or seen any issues with dark shading that you can't get rid of just by rotating the filter until it goes away. But there are also scenarios where you may not want that polarization in there. So it's kind of a mixed bag in terms of having them combined. It's great in some scenarios to not need to stack filters like right now. But if I was in a scenario where I wanted the ND without the PL, then, it's kind of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other there as far as what you prefer. Now, polarizing filters aren't going to make every bit of glare go away in a really high glare situation, but just as an example, this is it not rotated in the best position, and this is how much glare we're getting on the window. Now the filter is rotated into the best position that I could get. The glare is still going to be there, but hopefully you can see through the window to me just a little bit better than before. So hopefully that demonstrates the relative effectiveness of what you can expect from these NDPL filters in a video situation trying to shoot through a window in really high glare. Ultimately, I had no major complaints about the filters other than how they interact with the anamorphic lens. Because you need to turn the front of the filter to get the look that you want, to get the polarization just right, you also have to try to hold on to the rim of the lens so it doesn't rotate and skew your image, because it is pretty easy to turn. I fumbled around with this quite a bit, and if you have bigger fingers, I would imagine it would be more frustrating because these are pretty small things you're trying to hold and turn. But otherwise, the filters did what they're supposed to do. All right, that just leaves us with the film rig, which has an MSRP of $89.99. This rig allows you to shoot handheld with greater stability, as well as with traditional accessories like external drives and microphones. I actually have 2 other smartphone rigs that I've used, and Sandmarc's is different in a couple of ways because the sides are handles and they have this curvature to the way the frame is built. There's also this kind of extension arm here, which is optional. You can remove it like I did if you don't want to use it, which attaches to one of the sides here with an additional screw. And you can kind of position this any way you want. So if you need to have either the phone or an accessory positioned off to the side, you can do that as well. So you can get, a microphone in just the right spot. Now you can also, of course, attach any kind of tripod plate to the bottom of the rig like I did here and use it on a tripod. Overall, the quality of the materials here is nice, and I'm not disappointed in the construction at all. The phone mount that's included is a pretty standard spring-loaded style mount. It works with pretty much any size phone, including larger ones like the iPhone Pro Max that I have. The mount is attached with a 1/4-inch screw so you can move it around to different positions as needed. There are 1/4-inch threaded holes and slots around the top and bottom. One side, just what I have as the top here, has 2 cold shoe mounts as well. One nice thing about the shape of this is that with the phone mount centered like this, the shape of the rig allows the USB port of the phone to sit just slightly in front of the position of the side handles, making it easier to connect a USB cable without needing a right angle adapter, and that has been an issue on some other similar rigs that I have used. So what's missing? Well, there are no 3/8-inch mounting points anywhere on here. So if you have an accessory that uses a 3/8 inch mount, you will need an adapter. The other limitation here has to do with the two side grips. I have two things to say about that. Number one, if you do have a bigger phone like I do, this is the iPhone 16 Pro Max, the space that it leaves between your fingers and the grips is very small, and I don't have very big hands. So if you have bigger fingers, this is gonna be a real tight squeeze, and it can get a little bit awkward. You might need to start holding it like this or something. This honestly could just be a little bit bigger to give more space for your hands if you have one of the bigger phone models. If you have one of the smaller models, it's definitely less of an issue. The other thing I have to say about this is that while it does make the rig easy to use for handheld footage, it also means there are no mounting points on the two sides. With other smartphone film rigs, like this one here from SmallRig, which is also less expensive, by the way, the entire cage is covered with mounting points, including the sides. You can still attach handles to the sides because you can buy them separately, so you still can do handles off to the sides for handheld footage. But if you're using this sitting on top of a tripod, you also have the benefit of all these extra mounting points that are on the two sides. And I kind of like that. I like the flexibility of being able to do optional handles and still have extra mounting points versus only having handles. Overall, for the price, the quality is good, but in my opinion, it's not the most versatile rig that I have used. So overall, how did I feel about using Sandmarc's iPhone filmmaking accessories? Well, overall, I'm impressed. I thought the anamorphic lens performed very well compared to the 1.33x lens from Moment and for a much more wallet-friendly price. So I personally would be willing to accept the small annoyances with keeping the lens straight, but that decision is up to you, of course. It's definitely not going to add the level of character as a 1.5 or 2x anamorphic lens on a dedicated camera, like I mentioned, but it's still going to be more character than the typical footage you would get straight out of your iPhone. The phone case itself is solid, and I did not mind leaving it on my phone in between using the lens and filters. That is not something I can say about the Moment case that I did have to pay $50 for. I don't really like keeping that case on my phone in between using it with the lens. The NDPL filters were useful, but combo filters are not everyone's preference. So if you like to keep your ND and PL filters separate, then maybe their standalone ND or variable ND filter would be a better choice. They do offer both of those. The rig is good for handheld filming, but when using it on a tripod, it doesn't have as many mounting points as some cheaper options on the market, and it also doesn't leave much room for your hands if you have a bigger phone. All right, so that'll do it for this video. Let me know what you think of these filmmaking accessories from Sandmarc. Let me know if you picked up any for yourself and how you're liking them. Don't forget to subscribe to the Semi-Pro Tech+Gear channel, and while you're here, check out one of these videos. I know you'll enjoy it. Thanks, everybody. See you next time.